Do you have any tips or drills for head movement when working the heavy bag? When you are working head movement on the bag, there's absolutely no difference than when you're working head movement on the bag, in shadow boxing, in sparring, on the mitts, on the rope, on the tennis ball, on the reflex ball drill. There's no difference in any of those different drills that you do anything different on the bag. They're all the same. You basically transfer what you are, how you're moving and what you're doing from one to the other, and then just the technique and the flow and the pacing and the strikes and overall technique follows you to the bag and follows you to sparring. So there's absolutely no difference, and I don't do anything different on one versus the other. Now, in terms of tips of using head movement and drilling it, here's what I like to do. At first, I like to isolate and drill and incorporate head movement into drilling. So for example, I would start with shadow boxing, and I would incorporate just a few specific movements of head movement. So for example, I may throw a jab, but instead of just throwing a jab, I would dip and maybe parry an uncommon jab, and I would throw my own. Or I would throw a cross, but I would move my head up the center line and throw a cross. Or I would combine the combination. I would do jab, cross, and I would move my head, kind of visualizing punches coming in. So I pick 3, 4, depending, but I pick a few of movements and I drill them over and over and over again. And then I take that and I transfer it over to other equipment that I can do solo. So putting a rope across 2 bars where I can practice head movement, striking, and then incorporate some footwork into it. Or I hang a small slip bag and I push that bag away and I simulate head movement as the bag coming at me. So that way I can actually have something coming at me and I move. And sometimes I also simulate punches as I move, head move, and I throw as a counter. And then I put that all together and I do it on the bag. And that allows me to actually get that distance and throw strikes. So after I drill shadow boxing, or I don't do them all at the same time. I just do maybe shadow boxing, then I work on the bag. Or I do a slip bag and I go on the punch bag. Or I do rope and I go on the punch bag. So I kind of start off with drilling technique first, then going on the bag where I can actually get some distance and counter while I move my head. And then I kind of pick up the pace. And I pick up the pace on all of them. I start slow in each one, and I pick up the pace and pick up the speed, and then I move on over to the bag. So when I'm on the bag, I basically take what I drilled in shadow boxing, in the rope, on the slip bag, and I incorporate into my puncher bag, into the drilling of head movement. So I may throw a jab, but now I've conditioned my body, kind of gotten that bit of a muscle memory going to where I can now jab and move my head. Jab or a cross, move my head up the center line. Or I come in and I just stay loose and I go jab, cross through a combination. Maybe I incorporate some footwork if I drill that. So I go jab, cross, kind of dip under, bob and weave, incorporate some head movement and a counter. So that's what I would recommend. Start slow, work shadow boxing, and then work the same thing on the bag. I like doing that because it allows me to pick something very specific, maybe a few movements, and then incorporate it into drilling technique, pick up the speed, and then go in the bag where I can actually strike and gauge distance. Another important part is if you have somebody that you can that can hold mitts, pads, or that can light spar with you, that's going to improve your head movement a lot, because they can, if they hold mitts for you, they can pressure you, they can kind of simulate strikes, so you kind of move away from the pad and you strike at the same time. So you incorporate head movement as a reaction of somebody throwing something at you. Super useful. And then you can do some light sparring where you just maybe go 15-20%, maybe they throw at you but you don't throw back as a drill, and then you just do head movement. And then you kind of, when you develop that muscle memory going off of somebody throwing, then you'll have better sense of what to do on the bag, because you've drilled, you drilled with somebody, you've sparred with a lot of people, you've light sparred with them, maybe you did focus pit work, and then you can do the same thing. You can kind of visualize and simulate the same kind of movement that you would on the bag. So you don't just stand here hitting the bag, you actually visualize jab, cross, jab, hook, hook, slip, move, off the center line. And then you kind of take everything that you drilled solo, or if you incorporated some of the movement, hopefully you have somebody who could hold the mitts, light spar with you, and then you work the bag. So overall, there is no difference what I do on the bag or what you would do on the bag or in anywhere else. It's all the same movement. You just transfer the movement from one area, from one type of drill to another, it's all the same.